Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our hands demo. And today I'm going to show you two different ways of drawing a hand. Now, one is a very simple way where it's easier to draw hands if it's in kind of like a standard pose, like something like this or like this. However, the first way is not helpful for if you want to do something more complex, like a thumbs up or a peace sign or whatever. And then the second way is actually the way that I prefer to draw hands. So just know there's not just one way to draw hands, and it's perfectly okay if you don't use either of these ways. As long as you're getting a hand that looks correct and is correctly proportioned, then that's what we're aiming for here. Okay, so I have my clean sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and label it Hands Practice. And then let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to place my hand just flat and normal, just to show you this first way. Now, when talking about the hand, it's important to know, now not everyone's hands are the same, but it's important to know your fingers are really close to the size of your palm. Now, a lot of people have longer fingers, so this doesn't fall true for everyone. But even with people that have smaller hands like I do, our fingers are pretty close to our palm. But just know your fingers can be larger. Okay, so to start off with the first way, I like to start with the palm, and I like to create this rounded square. Now I'm going to go back through and make it less of a square later. So just know we're not going to end up with a completely boxy hand. And just a reminder of Art 1, I'm using gesture lines here. I'm not using like bold contour lines. My lines are gestural because they appear sketchy. Okay, so I have my palm here. Next, with the first way, I like to show you guys how to draw your fingers and then indicate your joints with circles. And this kind of helps you create a good layout for your hand. So, I'm going to go ahead and start with my pointer finger. And just using it as a reference, I know it's still pretty close to my palm. So I'm going to just do that. Also, we know our fingers are not all the same size or heights. So that middle finger's taller. Then we have that ring finger, which mine's a little bit shorter than my pointer, which I'm sure yours is pretty similar. Then we have our pinky. And then the thumb is tricky, I'm not going to lie, but I just go out with my thumb. And I also like to pay attention to the distance between my thumb and my pointer, and make sure they're pretty similar. It's pretty common that some people will make their thumb super short or incredibly long and it looks like an extra finger instead of a thumb. But anyway, alright, we have our lines for our fingers. And then to indicate our joints here, I like to do little circles like we're going to do for our figures. You'll see us do this too. So little circles for our joints. Also, our joints should not line up with each finger. They should range in height. And then I like to just throw one at the bottom here and over here. Okay. So now when we go to draw the finger, I'm going to show you, or fingers I should say, I'm going to show you what not to do and what to do. So let's say we're drawing a finger from the side. I do not want to see you draw just a little hot dog. Okay, that's wrong. our fingers, where our knuckles are, typically have little divots. Now, looking at it this way, and everyone's hand is different, or fingers. Some people's knuckles, or where their joint is, their finger will start to protrude out. But then some people will have theirs where they protrude in. Now, mine kind of do both, where it like goes in, and then on that second bottom one, it protrudes out. So again, looking at it from its side, I'm going to indicate that. I'm going to indicate where my fingers go. So give them more dimension. Don't just give me a little hot dog finger. Okay, that's not what you have. So, keeping that in mind, I'm going to go back to this. And wherever I see a circle, I'm going to make sure that I indicate what that finger is doing. So for this one, it's going in, and then it'll start to flare out on that second one. Then this next one, same thing. And I'm just going around my lines and around the circles. Then we have our pinky here, doing the same thing. Okay. Then our thumb is a little bit trickier, just because it's not as, I don't know the word I'm trying to think of, like stagnant, or it's a much different shape than what our fingers are. So typically we have like a flat side of a thumb, and then it curves, and then we have this other part of our thumb here that always has like a little bit of a more curvature to it. So just keeping that in mind, like for this top part, like I mentioned, it's pretty flat, then it curves right here, right at that second one. And then just so you know, your thumb typically blends right into your palm. I think that's something we typically struggle with. So making sure it kind of blends right in. You don't want it to look like it's oddly attached to your hand. I'm going to make this a little bit more dramatic so you can see it. Just like that. So this is the first way, and I'm going to go through and just like reshape the hand a little bit so it's less boxy. So going through and curving this out. I can add my palm. I can go ahead and add a wrist. I can indicate where like the fingers kind of meet there at the palm too. And then also when drawing the wrinkles in our hands, I always like to say less is more. So just lightly indicating those, I think, is perfectly fine. Nothing too crazy. And that's just a quick little demo there. Okay, so that's the first way. This is a very effective way, like I said, when doing very basic hand positions like this or this and so forth. Okay, so that's the first way. Let's go ahead and move on to the second way. And I'm going to move to a more relaxed position with my hand. So let's do like something like this. So my personal preference when drawing a hand is to simplify it as much as possible. So what I'll do is I'll break it down into simple shapes, such as my palm, and then I'll start to lightly sketch my fingers, and then also start to break those down into little sections. There's also another way where some people will draw their whole palm, and then they'll draw pretty much all their fingers together as like one little box and then break it apart. I kind of skip that part. It ends up looking like an oven mitt, and then they'll break it apart. But anyway, that is not what I do, but that way works too. Okay, so for my second method, again, breaking it down in simple shapes. So I'm going to start off with that rounded square again. And again, I'm using very gestural lines. I'm kind of guessing right now. I'm not putting anything set in stone. Okay, so now I'm going to start simplifying everything. My thumb is over here. It kind of looks more flat to me, so I'll position it like that. My thumb is over here at the end of my palm. I'm just going to draw it as a simple rectangle. Then we have my finger. Then I have my other finger, or second finger. Again, another box. Same thing with my next guy. And then this guy is a little crazy because he's like pointing up at me. So I'm just going to draw him pretty short. Like so. So I've really simplified this as much as I can. Now I'm going to go through and really start to describe my fingers. Also making sure that I'm happy with the proportions. So again, making sure that pointer finger is pretty close to my palm. Now all of these guys are kind of bent and they are going to be shorter than my palm, but also indicating that if they did straighten out, they would be the correct proportion, if that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start defining each finger. And again, just using what I know about the fingers or the thumb here. I know that's flat. I know that it curves. Then I'll go through and start indicating my pointer finger, and again making sure it's not just like a little hot dog, and I am indicating those little joints there. Now I'm going to indicate this one where my finger is bent. Also, something important to note, your fingernails typically curve at the ends, so indicating that is a great start to drawing fingernails, especially when they're pointing at you. Now my angle of the hand you see, or this hand you see, and then what I see is a little bit different, so it's okay if my sketch looks a little bit different than what you're seeing. And I have my little rings there. And then this one has a lot of foreshortening because it's pointing right at me. So no whenever fingers or hands point at you, it kind of distorts a little bit and the proportions are off. But when drawing this, I really just want to draw the end of my pinky, and this is kind of how I'm looking at it right now, so you can kind of see like the end. So I'm going to indicate that. And I can't really see my nail. I can a little bit there at the top. So I'll indicate that. And then I can go through. So pretty much this method is great, especially when you're comfortable with drawing fingers and hands. And it's also great because you can be really quick with it and fumble around and kind of figure out what looks good, what doesn't. And you're pretty much just sketching at this point. Yeah, and just finding what looks correct to you. And you know what? I said I was going to show you one way. I'm going to show you just another way, just in case this way doesn't really work for you, especially if you're not comfortable with drawing fingers and hands yet. So let me do that real quick. So first way was drawing lines and circles to indicate joints. The second way was pretty much simplifying it first and then finding your fingers. The third way I'm going to do is going to be pretty much a rendition of the second, but simplifying it even more, kind of what I mentioned earlier about the oven mitt. So let's see, I'm going to do, what kind of position should I do? Let me zoom out here. Maybe something like this. So I'm going to do kind of like a partial thumbs up where it's not like fully closed, I guess. Okay, so simplifying it again, where I'm going to start with that palm. I'm going to try to do this quick so this video isn't incredibly long for you. Then I have my thumb. And then I'm also going to indicate these fingers. So palm here, and then these fingers here. And they're kind of folded over. And I can indicate my wrist there. Okay, so this looks super crazy. But anyway, I have my thumb, I have my palm, and then I have like the start of my fingers. And you know what? I think my fingers are a little off. Let's make those a little bit larger. Okay, so now, same thing. Going back and defining things. However, it's broken up a little bit easier where all my fingers are together. So I'm going to have my thumb here. Then I'm going to go to my first finger. My first finger is like right here. I'm going to go outside that box a little bit. Second finger is right here. Third finger. Bring out. And then we have our pinky. Okay, so simplified it. I found my fingers. Now I can go through and start defining everything. So pointer finger, going through. And it's okay if, like, I have to go outside the box here. It's okay if you didn't get it right away. That you have to change things. That's perfectly fine. I have to do that all the time. So start finger there. Kind of the start of my palm. Got a fingernail here. And I like to pay attention to what's happening at my joints again. Just making sure everything is angled right. Also, shading too will help kind of push things back and show that things are bending and are further away than they seem. And then again, I'm just going through and defining things the best I can. All right. So I've thrown 3 different methods at you. Again, the first one using lines and circles. The second one simplifying and breaking apart the fingers. And then this one was simplifying even more, but drawing those fingers after creating kind of like a little box for them. Okay, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. You will have a 5-hand assignment. Now, I'm pretty sure I said to make sure that your hands were life-sized. So something similar to what I have here, and making sure that they fit on both pages. It's okay if you need to go to a 3rd page, that's perfectly fine. However, something that I'm expecting here that I did not do is shade. So I do have an example from a couple years ago where we were using India ink. So I'm expecting some good value there. With a pencil, of course, you don't have to use India ink. But make sure you're practicing your dark values and your midtones and your highlights. All right. I believe that 5-hand assignment is due the next day, so that would be August 21st, and that would be at the end of class. And again, that's the 5-hand assignment in Google Classroom. All right. I hope this was helpful.